within this entire discussion around electoral reforms. As you know, the most talked about issue in Nigeria today, aside the insecurity, but especially the killings that happened in Kwara, and we condole with the families of the lost ones. It's the issue about the electoral amendments. And last week, or this week rather, the Senate passed its own amendments. There are three issues, and maybe I will come to distinguished Senator Abaribe to provide some sort of insight. There are three things that we have been told as a people. The first one is that the Senate passed electronic transmission of results. That's the first thing Nigerians have been told. The second narrative is that the Senate passed the Electoral Act or the Electoral Bill, but it retained the provisions of the 2022 Act in relation to collation or transmission of results, because the current act says that transmission of results shall be by a procedure to be determined by INEC. One of the things that we, the people, have been told is that those provisions were retained in the Senate bill. The third thing, that narrative out there, is that yes, the Senate passed electronic transmission, but it removed real time from the provisions. I guess there could be more, but as far as we're concerned, this is what we have been told. And we hope that this town hall will give us the opportunity to obtain clarity, but also reflect deeply about why electronic results transmission matter. But just a bit of background, if you're on this space, when the National Assembly is considering legislations, because we're a bicameral legislature, the House and the Senate will conduct its own business and pass its own laws. And where there's a difference in the laws passed by both chambers, they would have to harmonize their positions, because you can't have two different pieces of legislations from one legislative or from one national assembly. So this is why they have to agree with each other. In this case, the House of Reps last year passed its own version of the bill that has electronic transmission of results. And it came to when the Senate was going to vote, and there it appears that there are some differences in the way the Senate voted. But we're glad to have senators here. And maybe I will just go ahead and ask if Senator Abaribe, maybe we come to you. Let's start with you. Please, can you help us, understand what is really happening? Did the Senate pass the electronic transmission of results? Or maybe tell us, what did the Senate actually pass? Distinguished, you can unmute. Distinguished, can you hear me? Oh, well, I think he's out. Okay, so let me come to you. Distinguished Senator Natasha. Same question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yaga. Thank you, listeners. I do commend you for putting together this conversation, because I believe we at the National Assembly, we're only representatives of the people. And in matters like this, a senator, even though I'm from Kogi Central, my input there matters to every Nigerian. So even though I was not a member of the Committee on Electoral Matters, neither I a member of the conference committee, because pretty much the better part of the programs, the seminars and the meetings that took place happened during my suspension. And but I did witness I participated actively at in all the meetings that took place upon my resumption, and especially last week and this week. So what we did that includes the uh, sessions, the plenary sessions, and even the closed door. But I might not be able to speak on what happened in the closed door session because I could be penalized for that. But pretty much, let me speak as to the events that happened on Wednesday, upon which there's a national uproar. And I will try to be as honest as possible. And if there are questions that you need further clarifications, please draw my attention. Now, would you want Senator Abaribe to speak, and then I will touch on gray areas since he's back, or would you want me to continue and then
No, just
he
just
takes off?
continue. So when you're done, we
Okay.
can invite him to speak.
Okay, fine. So, what I witnessed then, I would say pretty much call it a parliamentary coup, because right when we started, every senator had a copy of the um, electoral act as we intended to, the electoral bill as we intended to pass into law. And then the particular portion you are speaking about reads to section 60, subsection 3. And let me read it as it's captured. The presiding officer shall electronically transmit the results from each polling unit to IREV portal. Now, for those who don't know what the IREV portal is, the IREV is the INEX result viewing portal. That is the online screen which everyone can log in and view the results as they are being collated from the polling units. So now, the presiding officer shall electronically transmit the results from each polling unit to IREF portal in real time, and such transmission shall be done after the prescribed form EC8A has been signed and stamped. Now, the two words here that we should all take note are transmit and real time. So while we were expecting that this will be adopted because there's a third column which uh, was marked retained. Now, when we're reviewing the clauses, you either say retained or deleted. So, but this is retained. That means for it to be retained and ready to be passed means it must have scaled through all the necessary checks, and all the members of all the committees, well, the larger part of them must have vetted it to be so. That means we did not expect any difference from what was anything different from what was already contained here. But suddenly, the Senate president called on Senator Mongunu that he should read. And then when he read, what we noticed was the word transmit was changed to transfer and real time was deleted. And some senators were objecting to that. But, it's like when I say it's a coup, because what happened was more like it was already predetermined drama, whereby some senators were deliberately making noise, speaking loudly. It was like an opera situation whereby the voices of those that were objecting were kind of drowned. And there were quite a number of them who were saying, no, that's not it. Why do you change the word transmit into to transfer and all of that? But before you know it, the Senate president asked the question of nay or a, and then he hit the gavel when he got the a that accepted the word transfer. And then that was where we heard there was a whole lot of conversations going on. But of course,
Okay.
the rule is that once the gavel has been hit, then that's it.
Okay.
But I would say this, because when we're in chambers, we can't access our phones because the service gets jammed. But the moment I stepped out of the chambers, I received text messages, Wi-Fi, WhatsApp messages from my staff. I won't mention his name. And he then mentioned, he was trying to hint me of that plan. Pretty much the workers in the National Assembly, you know how there's this conversation of those who already knew what was going to happen. He was trying to notify me. He was like, Madam, distinguished, please, there's a plan to change the word transmit to transfer. Please object, notify your colleagues. But I was not privy to that information because my phone was not working then. Maybe if I had access to that information, I would have notified more senators to be prepared and aware. So that's why I say
Okay.
it's a coup. It
Okay.
was planned, it was coordinated to disenfranchise a
All
lot
right.
of, I would say, Nigerians, and it's
Okay.
totally wrong.
All right. Thank you very much, Distinguished. We'll come back to you because you've raised a few issues. But let me bring in Distinguished Senator Abaribe, whom I had beckoned on to speak earlier. Distinguished, can you unmute just to be sure?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've done so.
Thank you very, very much for joining us this evening. I don't know if you heard the question I asked. Can you help
Yes,
us?
I did.
Okay, if you could just
Yeah,
respond.
yeah. Just like Senator Natasha said, it was exactly what happened. There was a lot of movement, a lot of noise, and all that, and we never knew what just transpired. And we turned around and said, no, 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 what the hell went on here? In fact, it was Senator Victor Ume who called my attention and said, what we have in the paper before us, which we are supposed to have just gone through, was not what was passed, so that it was transfer. Then I walked to the Senate president and asked him, what exactly did we pass now? He told me himself, oh no, it was transmission, it's not a problem, everything is fine. And I believed him. I came back. And then everybody was saying, no, 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 this is what went on and all that. So we now said, okay, what do we do now? You know, under our rules, once the gavel is hit, you can only come back to that particular issue by a written motion. So it's like tying your hands. You can't move anymore. It's called a motion on rescission. And so what we now said, okay, fine. And he continued saying, don't worry, it was transmission. After all, he has been there in the rules before. But we said, no, the issue is not whether he has been there in the rules before. It was there, but it was there as an internal matter and a guideline of the INEC. And the Supreme Court ruled that the fact that it's a guideline of INEC does not make it law. That's why everybody wanted to be put in the law. So, where do we stand today? We stand with the fact that we thought that what we had passed was transmission. And they now say, oh no, what was passed is transfer. I say, okay, fine. Let us see the votes and proceedings. Usually, when you finish all your work in the Senate and do everything, the votes and proceedings which follow on the next legislative day, you have to pass it. And the question is it a true reflection of what we have done? So we intend, and in our press conference, we said it very clearly, we want to see the votes and proceedings and know exactly what they have put there as what we passed. If what they have put there as what we passed is transfer according to the 2022 Act, then it means that we will have to activate make the transmission of results in the law. They're still going to do exactly what they do in 2023. Write results, call it, and tell you to go to court. When you now get to court, the court will now tell you that it's not in the law. That's it.
Thank you very much, Distinguished. Provide. Why is electronic transmission of results and collation, why do they matter in this entire discussion? Bukola. Bukola, are you there?
Iaga, just in case you need me to put out some statements to that with respect to my experience on the field and how we were able to
Okay, yes.
utilize
Yeah, yeah,
everything, I
because
could help you with that because then you will understand why it really matters.
okay, I'll come to you, but let's hear from Bukola. Bukola, can you unmute? Are you there? Okay, we seem to be having a glitch with you. But Peter, thanks for joining us this evening. Why is this whole discussion about electronic transmission and collation? Why is it important? Why does it matter for Nigeria's democracy? Peter?
Good evening. Please, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay. Good evening to our leaders, senators who are on the call. Our Senator Natasha and the distinguished Senator Abaribe, and to every Nigerian. Why this is important is because democracies are built on free, fair, credible, and peaceful elections. They are the foundational basis of every election. The fact that in Nigeria today we have leaders who will commit to every other thing but free and fair elections should tell you the extent of mischief as to why Nigeria will continue to go around in circles, because there is no means of holding bad and corrupt leaders accountable. And the only hope and confidence of corrupt politicians is in a corrupt electoral process and a corrupt judiciary. Why is electronic transmission important and supposed to be mandatory? It was INEC's own former chairman, beginning from Jega, then passed over to Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, who wrote an INEC position paper 21 stating that the bane of Nigeria's electoral malpractice is in human interference. The shrine of election rigging is in collation centers, and therefore, to reduce human interference, it was necessary that the process is insulated to a certain level, which will involve electronic technology. This same Mahmoud Yakubu proceeded to meet with the then NCC director Umar Dambata. They set up a steering committee, invited telcos, including MTN and the rest of them, set up a technical committee to get advice on to how they have been helping JAM to conduct CBT exams. That was as far back as 2018. Then the Speaker of the House of Reps, who is the current Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, invited NCC officials to the National Assembly in the House of Reps and inquired from them, do we have enough broadband to implement this? They said in some areas we have 2G, in some areas we have 3G. INEC now wrote to the National Assembly stating that we are not asking you to pass a law on something we are not already implementing. We only need legislation to back up what we have already implemented in off-cycles elections in Edo, Ondo, and other parts of the country. We are in line with this electronic transmission of results. Somehow, the law was passed and a caveat was put in section 60, subsection 5, that the presiding officer will transmit in a way and manner as prescribed by INEC. Did INEC prescribe the way? Yes, paragraph 38, 39 of INEC guidelines. But the courts did not still hold INEC to it. So Nigerians now insisted that let what is on the INEC guidelines be reflected on the Electoral Act. If we need to amend any relevant section of the Constitution, there should be consequences for INEC. You cannot have a glitch and go ahead to announce a winner. If there is, it is mandatory for INEC, because as we are talking right now, people have received hundreds of millions of contracts in INEC on electronic technology. So if that is not working, have those contractors been prosecuted? So in the entirety of it, Nigerians must know that there are human beings who want to ensure that this system does not work. What is one of the ways to which you can insulate that process? It is through electronic technology. The only reason why it is not working, it is because Akpabio and certain persons have decided that that system should not work. And Nigerians must reject it, because it is a ploy to force on Nigerians an incompetent or a corrupt leadership, even without an election. It is extremely important, because this is INEC's own position that only electronic technology will insulate this while we mobilize to protect our votes. Thank you, and I yield for now.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. I don't know, Bukola, if you're able to speak now.
Thank you very much, Samson. Can you hear me now?
Excellent.
Oh,
Yes,
great.
we can.
So thank you very much, and everyone. I think it's very, very important we look into the advantages of electronic transmission of results, most especially where we are now in our democratic and electoral dispensation. Number one reason why this is very, very good is I think it helps transparency of the result management, and which nobody can fault that, and everybody accepted that. That is one of the reason. That is one of the that is one of the areas citizen generally agrees on in terms of transmission of the result. If you recall, in 2023, the moment INEC announced that they are going to do this, and then we are going to see it on IREV, everybody was the hope was high, and then people believe it's going to foster transparency. But the disappointment, no matter how good the election of 2023 is, what people were so disappointed about was that because that IREF did not work. And that IREF that did not work is actually cast probably a shadow on that particular election. So transparency is one of the real things because people want to see that result being transmitted or on the IREF. And by the time it's there, or that same IRF can also serve as the collation point, and then you are beginning to see it. Now, what we are looking at is this: politicians, citizen. At the end of the day, when you look at that transparency, it will reduce the litigation that come after the election because it will be very obvious. This is the result. Nobody is talking about result being mutilated. Nobody is talking about result being written at the collation center. What something has changed from the polling unit to the ward collation, and something has changed again from ward collation to the local government to the state collation center. And this supposed to be like a game changer, most especially when INEC has also invested a lot around electronic, around IT when it comes to this election. So for me, this electronic transmission of results will improve transparency. We also help to reduce the time of collation. Now, when you look at the layers of collation, they are a lot cumbersome. They are a lot, a long process. But this can also shorten the old standard. Then number three, the acceptability. That is going to help in terms of acceptability of the results, both citizen and everybody, because you are the polling unit. You saw the form EC8A in your polling unit, you witnessed what was counted, and then you see that also on IREF or on any collation platform. And then by the time you see it, you are rest assured and you are happy that what I witnessed was actually what is here. And then you see the tabulation, you see the collation. And I think that when citizen and the politician and every other person agree that look, this is it, then it reduces the litigation, the interference of the judiciary, even in the election. So I think if electronic transmission at the point at which we are now is being taken out, then we are looking at the weakest link in election results management, which is collation, which
Okay.
is transmission. Thank you. I yield
Okay.
for now. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to bring in Senator Natasha and Senator Abaribe, since you are field marshals when it comes to elections. But before then, let me come to you, Yemi. You followed this process all through. What do you think is really happening, and where do we go from here?
Thanks, Samson. Good evening, everyone. To be honest, I think it's really very simple. The nature of the politics that we practice is the more opaque it is, the more wiggle room that politicians have to make election outcomes favor what they want or favor them, the better. And so the less citizens are able to follow the process and engage appropriately, the more we have outcomes that can be manipulated, for lack of a better word, really. And I like what Peter said, that this whole electronic transmission was INEC's idea of saying that, look, we've put this thing, we're going to do it. So it builds trust in the system, and it allows us to see how the elections are being added up from polling units all the way to national, as the case may be. And so one then wonders why this is such a big deal for the Senate to pass. I mean, I like what Senator Abaribe said just now, that he asked Akpabio a direct question and he lied. So when people are intentionally lying, not just to colleagues, but to Nigerians national TV or from his seat and speaking to Nigerians nationally, it makes you wonder really what is at stake. So what is at stake for me? And really, this is very simple, that Nigerians must remind people in the National Assembly that they're simply employees. Now, no matter how many millions of naira you're getting in allowances, how your escorts are playing, or whatever it is that you're doing, at the heart of it, you're simply employees of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and more importantly, of citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And I mean, there's been so many issues with this administration. If we start listing them, we'll be here all night. But I think this provides an excellent opportunity for Nigerians to remind them, all, how many of them? 460 of them, 460 Nigerians, tonight over 90 million registered voters. Come on. Like, come on. They really need to understand, like, get it into their heads that you are there as a privilege of people who elected you. Nobody put a gun to your head to run for office. You decided you wanted to serve. Now, it might not be what you're expecting, or maybe it's a bit more work than you plan to do, but nobody put a gun to your head. And so this provides an opportunity for Nigerians to remind them that you are there because we needed representation. We need people who can make laws and make Nigeria better, that reflects what we want as a Nigeria that functions and a Nigeria that to have elections that make sense. Elections that, after all, I mean, we started campaigning. Election is not even out. Turn anywhere, you're seeing campaigns from president to senator to governor. Everybody's just acting anyhow without a campaign, an election calendar, and violating laws up and down. We're not even dealing with that. But on this one, the way forward is the committee starts their meeting on Tuesday. And if they don't want to receive sense and quickly do the thing that it aligns with what Nigerians want, then Nigeria must show them fully that we're not playing. I yield.
Well, thank you very much. Maybe to come to you, Senator Natasha and Senator Barry, if from your own experience, if you could briefly just tell us why you think this electronic transmission of results and collation is important, so we learn from your practical experience, and then I bring in Cynthia. I see that we have someone from the House of Reps, the spokesperson from the House of Reps, Honorable Rotimi, who is also on, and hope to add him as a speaker shortly so he can give us the own perspective of what's happening in the House, and then we'll take it up from there. Also, see Fowles. Thanks for Fowles, the bad guy. Thanks for joining us this evening. So, Senator Natasha, you wanted to share a bit of your experience. If you could just briefly share, and then we can come to Senator Abaribe.
Thank you so much. As one who won her seat back from the courts, I relied heavily on the IREV. Even though I witnessed that a number of politicians still lost by the IREV, but I will tell you how it went. Back in the village there are certain polling units that had pretty much no network. And I would say that because we did not have the network, so from those polling units, it was pretty much impossible to upload to the IREV. But for those polling units that were situated in areas that had good network, we were able to successfully upload our results in Form EC8A up to the IREV, and that was what we used at the courts. But I will say this, what Nigeria should consider itself in right now is to ensure and have conversations with the network providers to ensure that we have good coverage across the country. Because in as much as we are speaking for the real-time transmission, we should understand that Real time means the need to have all the results from every nook and cranny where people are voting to ensure that these results are transmitted right there, because there will be votes lost. And if you are not able to capture these results real time, then you give a chance for the results to be rigged. And let's talk about how they're rigged. Of course, it's quite cumbersome because there are various collation spots. There's collation at the local governments, then there's collation at the district, and then for state governors elections, we have collation at the capital. And it's from these various points that you see there are people who are already prepared. And sometimes this preparation to rig elections starts months before. You will have those who are ready to rig, you will see duplicates, like real, not photocopies, but real duplicates of the, what's it called? The forms. And you will see people sitting in the buses while they are driving from the polling units to the local government. There are buses with these duplicates, and people are there thumb printing. And unfortunately, the polling unit officers or the officers that accompany these results there, they have these beavers with them, and they somehow are able to corrupt these beavers, that they slide in voters card, they'll slide in the same voters card and it keeps reading. I don't know if I'm making sense. So what I think needs to be done is, considering the fact that 1.1 trillion naira has been budgeted for INEC in preparation of 2027 election, we need to ensure that smarter and safe softwares are deployed, that the equipment that will be utilized, I don't know if it's going to be the same beavers or we are going to have upgraded, smarter beavers. We need to ensure that these systems are ready and such that they will not easily be corrupted or hacked, that one beaver will be able to read and accept thumbprints that do not belong to the
Okay.
what's it
Okay.
called? Yeah, so that's what I'm going to say in
All
harmony.
right.
There's a whole lot to be done. It's not just
Okay.
while we are speaking to ensure that the word transmit and real time are contained in the
Mhm.
2025 Electoral Act, we should not fold our arms there. We should ensure that we monitor how INEC spends its 1.1 trillion in deploying smarter systems that will ensure transparent and credible elections.
Okay. Thank you very much. Distinguished Senator Abaribe, maybe let me just hold on. We're coming to you now, but I would like to bring in Cynthia, because Senator Natasha has shared her experience,
Before
and
you,
Cynthia has
distinguished
got
senators of the
extensive
Federal
experience
Republic,
working with elections. And Cynthia,
and this
with all
is
you've heard
those
concerning
who are
this issue, where do we go from here in view of the fact that we've been told that it appears there are different variations, and there's some attempt to scuttle the amendment that permits electronic transmission of results, given what Senator Natasha said? And maybe if you could also respond to whether electronic transmission of results, can solve the problem of election manipulation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Samson, and good evening, everyone, and thanks to our distinguished members of the House for joining. I think the first thing is, where do we go from here? Is we need the harmonization committee, we need the conference committee to actually look at the version of the House when it comes to the provisions on electronic transmission of results. That the proposal that we have there in the version that the House passed is actually a direct response, one, to citizens' demand for a complementary process of electronic transmission of results to work together with the manual process to ensure transparency of results. Two is also in response to the court's decision from the Presidential Elections Tribunal. The court's decision was almost like an advisory asking us to ensure that certain key procedures are part of the Electoral Act rather than in the guidelines or manual of the Electoral Commission. And so This, for me, is responding to one, the call from citizens to a more transparent result process, and two, the advisory. If you look at decisions of the court, it's almost like an advisory. If we want to rely on these results from the electronic transmission process, then we need it to be part of the Electoral Act and to be clearly stated, which is what the House version has done. It clearly states that results are transmitted from the polling unit to the IREV. And so maybe to respond to the pattern on history, I think it's important we remember that this is one provision that Nigerians fought for in the last reform process. Interestingly, it was still at the Senate that we met a roadblock, where there was also the Ninth Senate had tried to undermine or whittle down the provisions on electronic transmission of results. And Nigerians fought to give INEC the powers to do that, because INEC had told us that they can transmit results from different locations and they had the process and the systems to do so. And let's look at the history that the pictures of the results from EC8A are captured at the polling unit level and uploaded. Now, because there's also a recognition that some polling units may have certain issues, the idea is while you upload it, even for those few locations where you may call black spots, where the network coverage is not as strong, because the beaver actually is supposed to work with as low as a 2G. But however, the idea is even once you upload, you move to a location. Once there is internet, it uploads. And what we recorded, what we've seen in elections that we've observed, at least we've observed elections from the deployment of the beavers and the use of the IREV, that is pre-2023 general elections, we've seen recorded as high as 98 to 99% upload of results on IREV in some of the off-cycle elections. And in the 2023 general elections, we also saw how results from the from the polling units during the legislative elections, that's the House of Reps, the Senate and state assemblies, were uploaded from different nooks and crannies of the country on the IREP. Now, we understand that some took a longer time, but if you could see that by midnight of elections, you had, for some of the location, almost 90% of results uploaded. It shows us that we can actually achieve over 95% of results upload for presidential, for legislative elections, and even for governorship elections, for the different elections days. So data is telling us that this is possible. INEC has also said that this is possible. While I cannot speak on what happened for the presidential elections, because there are several issues around that, but what data is telling us is that with to the IREF portal. Now let us look at what the House version has said. The interesting part is the introduction of e-transmission also goes the part of collation. So it's to enable one transparency in results House version. What it says basically is at the point of word collation, the collation officials are to compare the manually transferred and the electronically transmitted, meaning that there's a likelihood that in one or two polling units, you can upload and it has not dropped. But by the time you get to a word collation, which is normally a lot more central than the polling units that are a lot more remote, that by the time you get to word collation, there's a likelihood that those results will be uploaded. But it gives INEC the opportunity to ensure that computational errors, as simple as computational errors, are addressed, because now you have an electronic version and a manual version to compare and contrast numbers. Then it limits the chances of
Okay.
manipulation of results to ensure some level of transparency and that voters can follow their votes from polling unit to every point of
Okay.
collation. I think that is what Nigerians are basically
Okay.
asking for transparency in the system.
All right.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Before I bring in, because I see some honorable members in the room, distinguished Senator Abaribe, maybe to just move away from their experiences, but to ask to go back to what you said. Um, has the Senate adopted, its vote and proceedings? And if the answer is, oh, maybe answer that if if you can. Yeah, distinguish, you're muted. I'm not sure we can hear. Um, maybe you can mute and unmute. And the reason why I ask this question is if the Senate, distinguish, are you there? Oh, the network. Is if the Senate didn't adopt its vote and proceedings, it appears the conference committee for the Senate, cannot commence its work. And therefore, we'll have to wait. Do we have to wait until the Senate reconvenes? Or there is a great need for us to ask that the Senate reconvenes, given that this is a very important issue. Distinguished, are you able to speak now? Okay, but I see Andrew, the country director of Action Aid, is in the room, and perhaps Andrew, you want to weigh in on this and also tell us how should citizens respond to this. Or distinguished? Okay,
Sorry, do
we.
you mind if I speak on that, whether the Senate has adopted it, so I can speak for
Oh, all
Senator
right. Okay,
Abaribe?
you can.
As at,
Yeah, you
as at
can. Okay.
today, the Senate has not adopted its votes and proceedings. Therefore, we do not have a working document to hand over to the Harmonization Committee.
It's a clarion call and it's straightforward, it's simple. This is one of the strongest, the biggest tool that the citizens have. So the government, when executive legislators are voted in, it's for a time frame, and citizens give the mandates to these government officials to represent us for a while, for a period, and we then go back to say we either want you to come back or want a new person, or we don't want you at all. And that power should not be taken away from the people. And that's where we are coming from. And basically, the weakest link for us still remains the transmission. That's where the magic happens between when citizens vote at the polling units and the result that appears in the collation center. So that's where the magic happens. And we want to make it transparent. So we all have agreed on that. So as citizens, as civil society, we are mobilizing citizens who are mobilizing other civil society organization, movements, network to come out. On Thursday, I signed a check for FCTRS to pay our payee. And it was tens of millions. We pay our tax. So we pay our tax. We do not cut corners as an organization. All the staff, we do not cut corners. So if we pay our tax, we we hold on our own part of the bargain. Then we expect that the government, our representative, should represent us and hold on their own part of the bargain. And we are mobilizing citizens group. We have, of course, Yaga is there. We have Situation Room. We have Movement for the Transformation of Nigeria that has over 70 network organizations in them. We have League of Women Voters, and we're all coming to the National Assembly in front of the National. That's the start of our mobilizing and action on Monday by 9 a.m. for a call to action to ask that either the conference committee does the right thing, or the Senate goes back and finalize that process and be sure of what was voted and what was agreed, and so that it is what the joint committee agreed, that is what we are standing on. And if that is what we are standing on, that should be what should be passed at the end of the day. Hopefully, even with the 360 days and 180 days, we also are pushing that the 360 days should remain. So we are mobilizing. Yaga is part of that group. We have several civil society organizations on that group. We're hoping that on that day we have between three to 5,000 people in front of National Assembly to pass this message. The media are there to support us. Nigeria Labour Congress are going to write a strong letter. We awarded them letter by today, tomorrow. They are, some of them will be there with us on that day. And if nothing happens, we will then decide what next. What's the next step we'll be taking on taking this forward. Um, that is what we are doing as civil society. For us, it's Action Aid. We align with all the networks. We are not coming as Action Aid as an organization, but we align. We are part of Motion, and we are also part of the Situation Room, and we align with all these organizations for us to rescue our country this time around. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. As you heard, there will be a protest on Monday, or whether you call it a march. But what has happened really calls for citizens' action, and it's important that on Monday, 9 a.m. at the front of the National Assembly, we all converge, to continue to put pressure that electronic transmission of results will be included in the act, and the conference committee would need to defend public interest.
Sorry,
I don't know,
Samson,
Senator Abaribe,
sorry,
if
Samson, just to add that it's a peaceful protest, just to say
yeah.
that we are
Mhm.
writing the police for not for permission, just to notify them that we are doing that, and it's going to be peaceful. If there are any issues, we of course will monitor it and we'll be able to take appropriate action. And there are other things we have seen where protests have brought lots of results. So even the last major one, which was the NSAS, we got results from it. But of course, we are not going to get the issues that happen with the answers. We're not going to. It's not going to happen with this protest. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thanks. Again, emphasize that it's a peaceful march, just to communicate to the National Assembly that it is important to ensure that the final bill or act has electronic transmission of results produced by the Senate would really complicate preparations for elections. I don't know, distinguish if you can unmute now.
And
Can you?
I've unmuted, but it's not. It looks
Oh,
like it's
oh,
not working.
okay. Now it's working. We
Okay,
can hear
can you
you.
hear me now?
Yes, we
So
can hear
I'll,
you.
I'll I'll make just 2 points. First point.
No, but before then, distinguished, Senator Natasha has responded
Oh
that
yes, I heard
the
that,
votes and
and
proceedings.
I absolutely agree with her. We
Okay,
have
what?
not yet adopted the votes and proceedings.
Mm,
Whatever anybody goes there to go and do in terms of saying that they came from the Senate to do the harmonization, they're going to go with a document that is inchoate, a document that has not been approved by the Senate, which means that the Senate must reconvene, pass the votes and proceedings, and then on the basis of the votes and proceedings, which also ratifies the members of the harmonization committee to have now been nominated to go to meet with their colleagues from the House of Rep. You see, let me just say this. What is going on is very simple. Procedures, processes are being just breached and just treated, in a whimsical manner. That is not how legislation is done. And we have been trying to put it up to our leadership to say, listen, you may not like the process, but that is the process that lawmaking takes. You don't do what you feel like and then just go ahead and do it. But that is by the way. The second part I want to point out is this: there is no part of this country that a POS machine does not work. None. Anywhere you go, a POS machine works. So when people come out and now say, "Oh, you cannot do transmission in real time," just tell them that they are not saying the truth. Cynthia just said it. Close to 95% of all things are uploaded at the same time. If it doesn't upload, the fact that you have already snapped it and put it up inside the beavers, when you move to where there is a little network, it goes. All that you see is just an effort to make sure that somebody will sit somewhere, write results, and then they just announce it that that is the result. The courts, of course, did not help matters when they said that guidelines of INEC is not law. Unfortunately, I don't agree with that. And I'm sure that some lawyers don't also agree with that. If you give a subsidiary legislation to an entity, that legislation that that entity does is supposed to be part of the law. But of course, because our people want to be smarter than every other person, they now say guidelines. So that's why everybody now says, put it in the law. And that is what we intend to do. So, first step, the votes and proceedings must show us exactly what we pass. If the votes and proceedings now show that what we passed was 2022 Act, then we will take it from there. And we have the procedures in our rules to seek for a change. Thank you.
Well, thank you very, very much. I think what is really clear from this particular remarks that both you and Senator Natasha provided is that the votes and proceedings is what will clearly say what has been passed. So currently, it appears that as far as we're concerned, electronic transmission, of results hasn't been passed. Sorry, I don't know. Sorry, that's Senator Kingibe. If you could just mute, thank you very much. Well, please, if you mute your mic. In a short while, we'll open the room for people who want to ask the panelists questions. But let me just ask maybe either Bukola, Yemi, Peter, and maybe anyone in the room, if you could answer this question. Do you think there is an attempt um, to ensure that we don't have a new act before the 2027, that all of these are just delay tactics because we've got INEC needs to issue timetable of elections based on the 2022 Electoral Act. Do we think that this is delay tactics so that we get to a point where this act is not passed, given some of the innovations in the act? And on one hand, isn't there an incentive for the lawmakers? Because part of the proposal in the bill is that legislators are really, to a large extent, automatic delegates when it comes to the primaries. But do we think that there's a deliberate attempt to delay this process so we don't have a new act in the 20 that will govern subsequent elections and 2023 elections? Maybe to ask you, I don't know, Peter. Bukola, do you want to quickly respond to this? What are your thoughts before we come to Senator Ireti Kingibe, who has just joined us? The spokesperson of the House of Reps, because we actually want to hear from the Green Chamber. He's been trying to join in. He sent a request, but I can't see. But we'll add him shortly. But anyone of you wants to weigh in on this?
Mr. Sampson and Nigerians, beyond being a deliberate attempt at stalling the passage of this bill, the eventuality of it is a deliberate attempt at forcing on Nigerians leadership that is unpopular even without the mandate of the people. Every step that has been taken so far, look, is it not unfortunate that today Nigerians who are not paid lawmakers are the ones sitting to tinker a way to strengthen the electoral process? So what do we pay lawmakers to do? There was a glitch in 2023. Mr. Sampson, was there an independent audit of INEC to know what caused that glitch after committing hundreds of billions to an electoral umpire? The Senate went on recess or holidays in December, resumed at the end of January, sat for a few days, and the Senate president has adjourned the Senate until the end of February. So what else should explain to Nigerians that this is not just a deliberate attempt at stalling the passage of a bill, but ensuring that you tip the scale as far as 2027 is concerned? And that is why Nigerians must be very vigilant, because Even in the eventual fact that this electronic transmission is being put in, there are also persons in the government who will be practicing how loopholes within the act is also going to be usurped against the people. So even if it is eventually participatory, Natasha raised something very important, talking about how the beavers have become equipments of corruption and how they are corruptible. Instead of lawmakers and persons who truly mean well for the democratic process to sit down and say, how do you strengthen technology? Then you now rather hear spokespersons from the Senate telling you why technology would not work. It is the highest. And if Nigerians continue to allow these things to go, and then you continue to look at the whole thing, and Akpabio is pulling the whole country to the brinks, and everybody is just moving at the pace because he's the one and they are the ones setting the pace. So Nigerians must now insert ourselves into the equation to force the hands of politicians and lawmakers, because by the time you leave this bill unattended, the only people it empowers are those standing upon the mandate which they shall collapse. They
Okay.
do not have 31 governors, they have 31 states. It's easier for
Well,
them to subvert the will of the people and carry out another Ubiako kind of arrangement on Nigerians.
Well, Peter, those are your views, those strongly expressed. But I think what is really important is that as citizens and as people, we have to continue to engage, and in doing so, we also have to be conscious that it is important to listen from all sides. And in that spirit, let me invite Senator Kingibe. Fortunately, you're just joining us, but thanks to two of your colleagues who have helped provide some context on what's happening in the Senate and where we go from here. And I just want to ask you one question and maybe follow up on that. What would be your recommendation for your colleagues in the Senate, but also for citizens, in the light of the current controversy around this particular electoral amendment? Because as far as we are concerned, the Senate has not passed the electronic transmission of results, or it is not clear to us where things actually stand at the moment. What would be your sort of recommendation to citizens who are on this call, but also to your colleagues? Senator Kingibe, if you can unmute.
Sorry. Just like I said yesterday, my recommendation to the citizens is who your representatives are. We are the ones sitting there. We're meant to be your voice. And depending on how consistent
Senator
you
Kingibe,
are,
I think the noise in your background is it's loud.
but I'm
What?
just sitting down.
No,
Hello?
hello.
There's, maybe I should just move.
Yes,
Nobody's saying anything.
I think
It's
so.
an empty space.
There's a background
Hello?
noise. The background noise overshadows your voice.
Okay, I'll speak louder and I'll just move
Okay.
away from whatever it is that's
Fan-
coming in.
Okay.
So, like I said, to the citizens, just hold your representatives accountable. Every time anything unpopular has been tried in the National Assembly, it's actually the will of the citizen and how insistent they are to their representatives that has always stopped it or pushed it. So that's what I have to say to them. I said that last night on the X space. I'm repeating it again. And to my colleagues, it's clear that once the people are very, very insistent, we are there to represent them. We are there for their will, and we will create laws according to their will once we know that we are accountable to them. As I said before, once there's no accountability, anything can happen. Everybody does what they like. But the more the people hold us to accountability and transparency, then the more likely they are to get what they want. That's my recommendation and that's my advice. Randy Peter, we spoke about this over a year ago, and he knows what I said about it then, and I'm still repeating it, that only the people can make the difference. We are there, yes, to reflect your will, but your will must be very, very, very clear. under the circumstance. I'm not trying to exonerate what's happening, but as I said, most of the senators actually were for electronic transmission. And other than passing the law as we thought we were passing it, they really, we are just as upset and as surprised as you are.
Well, thank you very much, distinguished. Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much. That is really disturbing. Only in places like Nigeria, with such things happen without any consequence for that. This breach of procedure, and it just really says a lot about the accountability mechanisms that we have. And introduce resolutions that are variance to the desires of Nigerians. But thank you very much. At this point, we'll open the room. I see a few persons have requested to speak. Please, you have 1 minute. We are going to wrap this up at 8:30. So please, if your request is accepted to speak, we plead with you that you just speak for 1 minute, and let's be very civil in our with our comments. Um, so let me start with Samuel Ozona. You can speak.
Sorry, Yaga. Let me just say this because you did request whether there has been changes on some of the timelines, and it's very
Yes.
important I mention that
All right.
the notice of election in the extant law, which is the existing act, it lists 360 days, which is by now we should have INEC publish the timelines, the notice of election. But we have in the Senate, we have reduced that to 180 days. That means if it's passed as at 180 days, that means we should expect the notice of election to be published by August. Now, another critical timeline which we also adjusted was the submission of list of candidates and their affidavits. That means the latest time the primaries should be held, and that we have reduced that from 180 days before the election to 90 days, which is 3 months before the election. And if our 2027 election will be in February, that means we should expect the primaries to be held by November, pretty much first week November. So just bear these timelines
The,
at the back of our mind,
uh,
hoping that the harmonization will go this way.
our distinguished. Now that you actually talked about this, maybe can you tell Nigerians why on earth did you guys alter the timelines?
Let me say this from my own perspective. At the 2023 elections, the primaries were held pretty much 8 months before, or 9 months before the general election. And that was so much a gap. And pretty much for me, it was very expensive to manage campaigns at such a long time. For that, personally speaking, I haven't interfaced with my colleagues to know whether they prefer the shortened timeline, but from my constituency in Kogi Central and myself, I think I appreciate um, if we conduct the primaries 90 days, which is shorter time before the elections, because that pretty much makes things cheaper and more concise, I would say. That's for me, I see, because the longer time is just so vague and a whole lot of manipulations go on and unhealthy preparations, and it's pretty much expensive. That's for me. So I think I
Okay.
prefer the shorter time notice,
May I
shorter
add?
time of
Okay. Okay.
Let me let me also weigh in here to say that for us who were supposed to do elections, who want to run elections and everything, the essence of reducing the timeline actually the timeline came from INEC. INEC said that they needed to print ballot papers according to each House of Rep constituency, each senatorial district, each House of Assembly and each governorship. And we felt at that moment that it was not necessary. If all you need to do is to do the codes for each polling unit and the 18. It does not matter whether out of the 18, only 6 are going to vie. You understand? And we felt that INEC's reason, which is that they have to tailor each each constituency to how many the number of people who we want to run, and that well maybe sometime in the future when you can have real-time printing that will happen, but for now print 18 is just the logo that you print. You don't print the people's names, you don't print their photographs, you don't print anything. So the question of timing to do this printing and all that should not be what we. And then we also felt that we're already late, even though I still feel that INEC itself is lagging. Why I say that INEC is lagging? The law in place at this moment is the 2022 law. So INEC should follow the 2022 law until the 2026 law is passed. So if 2022 law says that is 365 days, they are supposed to have issued the notification by now. They don't need to wait.
Mm.
May I
You
also
understand?
Okay.
Because they have to follow the law
The
that is
law.
in place
Okay.
until we get there.
may I
All right.
also add that at the
You-
during the electoral committee, which you were there, Samson, it was more INEC that wanted the longer timelines. We, the committee members who were politicians, wanted shorter timelines. And when we got to the floor of the Senate, if we said 360 days, which would make it February, and the law hasn't been passed, which that was also one of the things that happened. We couldn't just shorten the INEC 360 days to 180 and not shorten all the others. And that's really another reason why we changed it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I see some raised hands, but let me go to the participant. Samuel Ozonia, you have the floor. If you could make your comments or questions very brief within 1 minute, so we can take more, that would be great. Yes, Samuel.
Thank you very much, Samson, for the opportunity. And good evening, everybody listening. I'll make it very brief. So I have a question and a comment. My first question is this. If you look at the National Assembly as it is constituted today, um, unfortunately for us as Nigerians, the ruling party has the majority, not just the majority, but over two-third majority in both chambers. And now we are having this conversation, and it looks as if is the opposition against the ruling party. Should on the day, whenever the eventual voting of the proceedings, like the senator here did mention, had already mentioned, and it gets down to the issue of okay, let's even make it a vote. Unfortunately, we know how it will go. So I don't know. This is a question for any of the senators who could answer. What do the opposition senators who somehow still have the voice of the people in the Senate intend to do should this come down to an issue of voting when unfortunately the ruling party has the two-third majority in both chambers? And then just like Senator Abaribe lastly mentioned now in his last opinion, which I think I differ a bit, sir, you did mention that the INEC is lagging behind in the sense that you expect them to start with the 2022 electoral law. But I feel, I'm not a legislator, but I don't think that two laws can actually take effect in one election cycle. So if INEC immediately commences, for instance, with the notice of election with the 2022 Act, that, for instance, already renders the 2026 bill useless in a, for taking effect in 2027 election, because we cannot start 2027 election with 2022 bill, 2022 act, and then in the middle of the process convert back to
Mm.
2026 bill. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.
Well,
I don't know. I saw Jacob Pele, who was added as a speaker. I don't see him anymore. But let me um, perhaps ask Najib. Najib, you've been added as a speaker. If you could make your um, ask your question or contribute to the discussion, Najib. Well, yes, Najib. If you could ask your question or make your comments in 60 seconds. You're muted. Can you unmute?
too low is still not adequate as far as we are concerned. And now, with this amendment, the National Assembly is taking us backward. What do I mean? If we check the 2022 law, the IREV is there, but then the purpose of the IREV is just for viewing of the results by people. In essence, INEC cannot use the results that were uploaded in INEC, in the IREV, for collation of results. This is a loophole made by the 2022 law, which was utilized by the Nigerian judiciary in the 2023 general elections, and it seriously created a vacuum. My suggestion is that the results uploaded in IREF should be in the same
Host,
pedestal
we can't hear
with
you.
from ECFA. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. We can hear you. Go ahead. It-
Okay. So what I was saying is that the law should redefine the purpose of IREF. It should go beyond serving the purpose of viewing results. The law should mandate INEC to use the results in the IREF for collation of results.
Results.
It should
Okay.
have
All right.
it should have the same implication and purpose with Form ECHA,
Okay.
because if the purpose is just to view, then if the INEC decides for one reason or the other to shut down the IREV, the implication will mean that other things like from ECSA can still be used. That was
Yeah.
what three,
may
and
I
the
quickly
legislators
add?
have not
Okay.
taken note of that. These are
Okay.
vacuums that
All
the
right.
So
All
new
right.
may
Well,
amendment should
Najib,
address.
Najib.
May I add,
All
from
right.
being in the
Najib.
committee, that was
Okay.
the lapse that was there, and that's why we changed the language so that there is no other way that INEC can transmit the results except electronically on what is on the IREV. There's no other way. Yes, they will collate and give everybody. Something you recall how much we argued on that matter because the
That's right.
2022 law was not specific.
Yeah.
It was subject to interpretation any which way. But the
Okay.
2026 one was specific.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. There another question for the
Thank you, everyone. I want to congratulate the senators on this call, especially those of you who were bold to speak against this evil. But I want to charge and appeal to you, don't stop at just news conferences. We need to go beyond that. We need to be bold to speak to the mainstream media and let them know the evil that is confronting democracy in Nigeria. There is no better time for all of you to stand as Esther's and Davids of the Bible and save the country there's no better service than what all of you are doing. Senator Abaribe, Natasha, Kingibe, kudos. But we need to do more and be rest assured that citizens are behind you. Samson, thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you very much. Let me invite, I see Field Marshal. Field Marshal, please unmute and make your contribution. The one who goes by the handle Field Marshal. Ah, okay. I see Cynthia, your hand has been up. You wanted to comment on one of the question. I think let's take you briefly and then also take Bukola briefly because your hands have been on, and then we can go back to the room and take more.
thank you, and I appreciate the comments so far. I wanted to just make a point around the notice of election, and because there's a history behind the 360 days, and I think a lot of us were even surprised that it became an issue with the Senate process. Released 360 days to the elections. If you remember that the last general elections is the first way in a long time that was not postponed for any reason whatsoever. And that shows the that showed the impact of the provision on one, the early notice of election, and two, the release of funds at least 360 days. And I do believe that when it comes to notice of elections, that if INEC is making a demand for it, they are the institution constitutionally mandated to conduct elections. They understand the process and they understand why they need that time to ensure the process is easier done. And I do believe that honestly on timeline, I understand the argument for the primaries, but on timeline it's important that we prioritize the need of the electoral commission when it comes to easy administration of the process, but two, the call for Nigerians to have enough and sufficient time to plan and enough and sufficient
Okay.
time to engage their candidates. I think the second
Okay.
point for me, honestly, is on the passage. No 360 days. INEC still has till now to 20th of February. I mean, to release this notice. But in a moment of national emergency, we call on our lawmakers to sacrifice that time to sit and speedily resolve this process and have the president assent on it as Nigerians demand. This is the
Okay.
call to service for Nigeria's democracy.
All right. All right. Bukola, you had your hand up. I'll come to you and then I see there's Femi Ojo who wanted to speak. Yes, Bukola,
Thank you very
briefly.
much. Thank you very much, Samson. I think basically I want the distinguished senators on the call to understand on the issue of timeline that the politicians are not the only electoral stakeholders. There are security agencies, the judiciary, and also INEC. So you cannot be looking at the that in terms of your own preparation, and I'm talking about the generality of the politicians now, and then be reducing the timeline. Let's look at the logistics. It takes a lot of time to have election logistic in place. Don't forget 2011, 2015, and 2019 election were postponed. Then you look at 2023 because that is the first time you are giving 360 days notice of election and then 150 days for campaign, and then we had election without being postponed. Think about the issue of ballot paper. Are we saying INEC we have to print ballot paper just in 60 days? Now think about, you are not looking, the ballot paper are printed vis-a-vis registered voter, not even PVC. Even if you are printing vis-a-vis PVC, it's a lot. And then when you are printing, you don't print for the election day alone. What if there is runoff? Are we going to go back to the market to go and print? So they need enough time to do that. Lastly,
Okay.
what about pre-election litigation? Are you saying that you reduce the timeline? And don't forget, as of today, pre-election litigation goes all the way to Supreme Court. And see, the 180 days, the 90 days, and the 60 days is not realistic because we are I
Okay.
mean, they are taking us back to 2010. I think that
All
have to
right.
be reviewed.
Okay. Then Femi,
Please,
Femi,
may I say something? Just
this
like
this.
Senator Abaribe said, the candidates' names are not on the ballot papers in response to what the last speaker said. They are parties. The parties are not going to change. So whether it's 60 days, 180 days, it's still the same parties that are going to be on it.
Okay. Femi, I see you're now in the room. If you could just make a quick comment or your question,
Of
that'd
course,
be
thank
good.
you. I'll be very quick. I'll be very quick. Thank you so much. My name is Femi, and I agree 100% that election transmission matters. However, I wanted to push the conversation just one step further to have all of us thinking in terms of what happens when citizens can independently verify what is transmitted, and that goes alongside a lot of the comments around collation. For example, IREV was a breakthrough in 2023, but INEC also admitted that it had technical glitches, right? These results were uploaded late, and that's about 2,000 polling units where votes were not counted. In addition, the process generally has been INEC just transmits and citizens hope for the best. And what I'm doing is just a critical example that this is 100% possible. It's not rocket science. I myself, I spent the last 6 months building an independent platform to transmit elections live. It's called Cast. It's on my page, right? The question I have is that to make this fully work, we need the registered voter count per polling units for FCT and Rivers in February 2020, in February 21. So INEC shared this information with parties January 14, but this information is still not public. So there's still many, many layers to verification that we need to make happen. And so,
Okay.
yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry. Just looking at time because we want to respect the time. So next time we invite you, you can honor our invitation. But I really want to plead that we go over by just 10 minutes because we need to get more voices in the room, especially for the females who have indicated they want to speak. So this is not a male-dominated space. I see Adenike Awe. Please, if you can unmute and just ask your question or contribute to the discussion, that would be great. Adenike.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everybody on the space. My take is yes. Yesterday, one of the senators came on television and said we don't have coverage in some places. Why can't INEC engage the services of Starlink? Then, secondly, I want to be the devil's advocate. After all this, if let's assume the Senate passes this electronic transmission and makes it mandatory, what if the president doesn't sign the bill? So I'd like to know what will happen if he doesn't sign, like Buhari didn't sign in 2019. I yield the
All
floor.
right. Okay, that's fine. I'll come back to our panelists to respond to this question. But I wanted the one who goes with the handle PDOM Nigeria.
Yeah, thank you, Samson. It's nice to be on this space tonight. Yes, I want to start by first condemning what most of the senators are coming up on television to defend that Nigeria don't have network coverage to cover up the entire country for a real-time electronic transmission of results. Let's go by Starlink complete package is about 590,000. We have about 171,846 polling units in Nigeria. If we buy Starlink, just okay, let's just dedicate one Starlink for each polling unit. We are going to spend 102 billion naira for that. INEX budget is close to 1 trillion naira. So we can do that comfortably. So there's no excuse for that. We have bank, you can do real-time transmission of bank services right now. People pay money to an account, you get instant alerts. You understand? So there is no excuse for that. Secondly, we have POS in every nook and cranny of this country. Bandits are in forest communicating with kidnap victims' family. You understand? So are they pulling that out? And people are coming in this 21st century, 2026, to defend that we don't have network coverage. For that reason, we don't need real-time electronic transmission of results. That's the only voice of the common man right now. The whole system has been rigged. And let me tell you the last part of it is that even if we end up getting the Senate, forcing them to go with this electronic transmission of results real time, they can still come up with voters disenfranchisement, which will be high level of insecurity during the election. They will disenfranchise voters from voting. That's their next
Okay.
option they are planning. So
All
the
right.
ones that are standing, they should keep standing. The ones that are
Okay.
for the people, they should keep speaking out for the people. Go out,
All right.
defend what the people, the only eyes of the people right now, which is
Okay.
real-time electronic transmission of results. Thank you, Samson.
All right. Thank you very much. It's Joy Agashwa, the handle Joy Agashwa. We'll try to get you into the room. I'm glad that you're here. Fine. Yes, Joy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sampson. Thank you, distinguished senators and everyone on this call. So my question is very simple. I recall that one of the clauses was also rejected, and it has to do with the rejection of the clause that provides for a downloadable voter's card in the event of losing yours as a voter. And then that clause was rejected. I, for one, suffered that. In the previous elections, I couldn't vote because I had misplaced my voter's card inadvertently, and I applied. There were logistical issues. I was in Port Harcourt at the time, though I got the initial one in Benue State. However, I applied when I was in Port Harcourt. For some reason, it never came. I was, barred from voting. I was very involved in the elections, but eventually I couldn't vote. So I was one of those people who joined, the count that people are voting online, but they're not voting in person. So to
Okay.
solve that issue, I think that was the reason why that clause was made. So why was it rejected? Because I think it's going to help, solve a lot of issues in that light. Thank
All right.
you.
Well, thank you very much. Senator Kingibe, you have a couple of questions because I know you're a member of that committee. But before we come to you, we see the handle extraordinary Oma.
Yeah, good evening, Samson. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's a pity. I wanted all the senators to be present, but I see that Senator Abaribe and Senator Natasha, they've all gone. So I will direct this question to Senator Ireti. Sorry, before I go to the question, PDOM has already shared my thoughts around the coverage, and I want to agree with him that there is no excuse. Nigerians, we do not want excuses from the Senate anymore. We do not want excuses from INEC as well. A common Nigeria out here knows that that coverage is possible, and PDOM has, given some solutions to it. Now, for Senator Ireti, I'm sorry, ma'am, you keep saying that we, the citizens, should hold our senators accountable to be able to do the right thing. Do you think that's right, ma? Because as a concerned citizen, I'm just, after I do the work of, making sure I elect the senators or our representatives to go and represent the interests of Nigerians, then they turn back to me to say I have to be on their neck to get them to do the right thing. That is very frustrating. I am a frustrated Nigerian right now, and I wouldn't like to hear things like that. Please, ma, do we need to do this for the senators to do their job or to do the right thing? What can be done right now to rectify this thing happening about the transmission of result that Akpabio has done? We,
Okay.
the citizens, we can be out here protesting and doing what we can do. But you're in there. You know more than us. You know the laws of the Senate. I don't know. You know the section that will help or whatever you need to do to resolve this issue. And Nigerians are counting on you to do it, to resolve this. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we've got just 3 minutes to go. So, distinguished, maybe yeah, you have lots of questions, but I think Senator Abaribe is also in the room. Maybe to respond to the questions directed at you, but also to the question regarding what happens if the president does not assent to this after it has been passed, and in this case, after provisions like electronic transmission have been passed. Distinguished, you have the floor, and then we come to Senator Abaribe, and then I'll go around to with all the panelists so we can bring this to a close. Distinguished, you have the floor.
Well, a young lady who just said that they elected us. As you can see, right now, the minority senators are in the minority, so to speak. Now, we are speaking up. In Places like the National Assembly, the minority will have their say, but the majority will have their way. When we were debating this matter, a lot of the APC senators wanted electronic transmission. If they're not very vocal about it, whatever the reasons, but to actually get any traction, it's like you are at the edge of a place where a lion is coming to bite you and there's water, there's a big sea at the bottom. What will push you to actually jump if you're afraid is the fact that the lion is going to bite. I don't know whether my analogy makes sense, but that's the best I can do. The truth of the matter is, you don't want me to say that the people should hold us. It is the people who make us or not make us. That's the truth. People like me, have my finger on the pulse of the people. But there are other senators that will only put their finger on if the people insist. That's the best answer I can come up with. Now, as for the president not assenting, I think there's probably nothing that can be done if he doesn't sign, but Senator Abaribe is in a much better position to actually respond to that since he has a lot of historical knowledge.
Well, Senator Abaribe, you have the floor.
Well, we can for extraordinary. If the president does not sign, that means we go back to 2022. Then it will now be okay. Now you know what they have done in 2022. All they did in 2022, which you can counter, is simple. If you do not have your agents who are knowledgeable and who can stand their ground, then somebody is going to run away with whatever shenanigan they can. But if you have a knowledgeable agent who stands his ground, who makes sure that he collects the Form EC8A, then nobody can run you out of town. All that happens, and what I saw happened in 2023, I am I will say, a fortunate recipient of transmission real time because it happened. My son was in the house. His job was to collect all the results from IREV. So as the results were coming, he was, adding everything up. And he called me one time and said, "Dad, you're through." So it means that IREV and all these things work. But you need to have your people there. So all that we now need to do is for us to ensure that for each political party, you have your agents on ground. That's just what it is. What has been happening all this while is that people vote, walk away, and they think that that is the end of the process. They don't know that somebody has to stand there, make sure that the votes are counted and tallied properly, sign it, and take their copy. Especially take their copy. So many people just left these things because they were leaving things, for happen. That's exactly what happens if the
This,
president doesn't sign. If the
distinguished.
president signs, fine, then we do not have a problem. But we still have this option of making sure that your agents are on ground. That is how again.
Distinguished,
Yes.
distinguished. One would ask, the Constitution gives the National Assembly the power to veto the president when he doesn't sign or assent to a legislation. What happens to this power of veto when you, as a house, you have the power of veto? And if we can quote all of you, you said over 80% of lawmakers support,
Well, we
some
can
of these
quote
provisions.
over 80%. They can vote when it is necessary, but I do not think that they will have the courage to buck a president. I do not think so. When people start shouting that they are standing on a mandate, well, you can be sure that I will vote, but I doubt whether you will get, because it will need 83 votes. That's two-thirds in the Senate. I doubt whether they can get two-thirds. So if a president doesn't sign, we will just not have any other thing to do. Very sorry about that.
No, thanks for your honesties. Again, that's the reality before us, and I guess there are more conversations that we can have on that. But just to bring in the panelists, if you could just take 1 minute each to comment. I've been trying to get the spokesperson, Rotimi Akin Rotimi, the spokesperson of the House, Honorable Rotimi, who is on the call, because it will be unfair that we have a conversation without a voice from the House. And he's been trying to, come into the speaker's room. I've tried everything possible, but
Well, I
it's
think I
proving
think we should
very difficult.
commend the House. The House passed real-time transmission without a problem. And in fact, when we now go to the harmonization, what normally happens in harmonization is that there will also be voting for either the Senate version or the House version. And
Mm,
what I expect is that the House members haven't voted and haven't come to this point of wanting real-time transmission will be there, and some senators will join them, and real-time transmission will go on. So let's
okay.
thank Rotimi and his colleagues in the House. They have made Nigeria proud.
They are indeed the speaker's house in this particular. I said the speaker's. Sorry, the people's house, like the people's house, as they
Yes.
portray themselves to be on this particular issue, on this particular one. But so, Yemi, Bukola, Cynthia, 1 minute each. Closing remarks. Yemi.
Thank you, Samson. As I said earlier, good evening, everyone again that just joined. That this is an opportunity to remind members of the National Assembly that they're there at the behest of Nigerians and they should reflect what Nigerians want. I mean, there's several recommendations that we made around additions to what's already in the Act. But even if we just keep to aligning what the House of Rep has, that is what must be our way forward, a clear, unequivocal reminder that they work for the people of Nigeria. I yield. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Bukola.
I so much thank you, Samson. And just before quickly, I want to commend the House of Rep, who is more progressive on this matter than the Senate. And then we commend them. We just hope that they will keep this momentum during the conference. And I also want to call on everybody. The all hope is not lost now. We need to be at the National Assembly. Everybody, let's add our voice. Let's mobilize. Let's come and tell the Nigerian National Assembly that, look, this is what the citizen want and it should stand.
Well, thank you very much, Cynthia, and then
Um,
Peter.
thank you.
Yeah, but then let me just put a reminder to everybody. The Senate has adjourned till the 24th. I know that some of the person has told me everybody wants to come on Monday. You're going to come to an empty house. Nobody will be there on Monday. So even if you come on Monday, you have to also mobilize to come on the 24th when we will resume.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
thanks for that. Yes, Cynthia.
I think this is the time for the Senate in particular to show Nigerians that they actually care about Nigeria's democracy and reconvene. 24th is for me too late when we have an important bill for amendment for Nigeria's democracy. And so it's a call to the Senate to actually take this as a priority issue and to align their position with that of the House. The House version of the bill is more citizens friendly and it's a call to Nigerians. This is a time for us to stay awake and mobilize, call all our lawmakers and let them feel our heat, because Nigeria's democracy is ours to protect and ours to build. We cannot leave it for our politicians to make a mockery
Okay.
of what we've fought so hard for.
Well, thank you, Peter.
My country people, there is a deliberate attempt at increasing voter apathy and ensuring that Nigerians get so frustrated and tired. We must refuse to. Everything that is going on is not happening in a vacuum. It is deliberate. Whatever that happens, whether it eventually pass this bill, if you want to know how corrupt a country is, look at the number of their laws. Laws, no enforcement, no implementation. I beg you, Nigerians, the problem is channeling anger. We can be angry for 65 years as we have been, and we continue to take the wrong action. Even if this bill is passed, we must mobilize ahead of 2027. For this electoral reform bill, on Monday, Nigerians should come out and make the statement. Everybody in the National Assembly, Nigerian politicians have become too comfortable. Nigerians can force the Senate and Akpabio to reconvene and take priority into this issue. So, my country people, the message is simple. Elections have consequences. If we allow a consolidation of the criminality that took place in 2023, our lives and the lives of innocent citizens continue to make up for the incompetencies of governance. I beg you, let us use this electoral reform issue
Okay.
as a channel to
Okay.
fixing governance in Nigeria. Thank you and good night.
Thank you
May I
very
quickly
much.
add before I leave that Peter
All
has
right.
made my point about holding us accountable, making us do what you want. And on that note, I'm sorry, but I have to leave.
Well, we thank you very much. We've actually come to the end, but to deliver the closing remarks, let me invite Austin Igbe to do that. Austin, you have the mic.
Thank you so much, Samson Todo, for this very firebrand session. And I'd like to thank everyone who has joined us, distinguished senators, Abaribe. It's such an honor again and again, Reti, that we sincerely appreciate you. And of course, Natasha, but you did so excitedly. And of course, all of the other speakers, Cynthia, Yemi, my brother Peter, Bukola, and of course, Andrew from Ashone. Thank you. It is important to note that this intervention is aimed for the Nigerian people. It's aimed to save our democratic architecture. It's aimed to improve our system. And there is no better way to do this. And I'd like to thank all particularly Yaga, the organizer. Samson, you did fantastically well. Let me quickly just raise a few points and I'll explain it. The gavel is powerful in the National Assembly, but the voice of the people is more stronger and powerful. And in this case, the people's voice should be the true gavel that represent all interest. Having said that, timelines are very important. As we speak today, just on the 31st of January 2026, the NPP, the opposition party in Ghana, elected a flag bearer in the person of Dr. Bamiwa to contest the election of December 2028, not 2027, 2028. This time lag has implication for coordination. Just speaking to Senator Natasha, it actually creates an opportunity to build a base of supporters beyond just looking at INEC. It's more advantageous, in my opinion, for political for political actors and for transmission of results. I think that is the single most important piece of legislation that is citizen-centric. And above that is the PVC. We don't need the card to vote in today's Nigeria, because what the beavers actually need is the last 4 digits or last 6 digits of the bin number on the PVC. When you have that, just typing those numbers on the IRF, the person's information will pop up and the person can vote without hesitation. So in today's Nigeria, let's not go the way of the rule of the thumb. Nigeria has moved beyond this architecture. We are competing favorably well and ahead. Let's not begin to look back. If India still run electronic voting with about 300 million illiterate population, more than the total number of Nigerian population, why are we talking about
Yeah.
infrastructure? Infrastructure. And I think it's important, as part of closing, to thank
Okay.
everyone again. It's been very useful. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Just a quick set of announcements. Again, thanks to Honorable Rotimi. He's been part of this conversation. We would have loved to hear your voice, but we hope that subsequently we'll do that. Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone. Again, this spaces was not just hosted by Yaga Africa. It was just the handle. But I'd really want to acknowledge a few organizations that put this together. TAF Africa, the Nigerian Women Trust Fund, the Kuka Center, Fix Politics, Enough is Enough, the International Press Center, the Center for Media and Society. I hope I've mentioned all the groups who have been part of this, as well as Austin, and as well as the youth movement on electoral reform, the YREP. Thank you to everyone. We will host other spaces, and please do oblige us when we come calling. But please don't forget, Monday, 9 a.m. at the National Assembly, we will be part of the march to again express our views about the need to have electronic transmission as well as downloadable PVCs and other proposed amendments in the Act. Thank you very much. Please have yourself a very good evening and wishing you a blessed week ahead. Good night.